You know, when I was young, I thought it was just a shitty life that I was living. I couldn't get girls, and I didn't even know how to get girls, I would see girls, you know, when I was 20, 22, and they were so gorgeous, right? And they seemed unattainable to me. Beautiful creatures who were wandering around. And of course, they were with other guys, older guys, guys with cars, guys with money, guys with what? I felt like I was just like, you know, dog shit by the side of the road. And I thought to myself, you know, my life is always going to be shit. I'm always going to be dog shit by the side of the road. When I was 20, I didn't know shit from Shinola. When I was 20 and I was at the very bottom. I mean, I'm 51 years old now. And like what I've seen and what I've realized now, Jesus Christ, man, if only I... The point of this video is that, see, when you as a guy, and 97% of my audience are guys, so I know that you're more likely than not a guy. If you are a young guy, you are at the very bottom of the barrel insofar as the sexual hierarchy is concerned. But when you get to be my age, then you're going to be at the top. This is a graph that I made. Tracks the sexual attractiveness of men and women by their ages. It starts from age 16. You can see women, they peak at 20, 21. Remember that video I did the other day of how most men want a 20, 21? That's the peak of women's sexual attractiveness. And it only begins to decay. Notice how from the age 16 to 20, it just zooms right up. At age 20, it's at 100%. She's as hot as she will ever be. And after that, it's a slow fade. Okay? That's the point. It's a slow fade all the way to, at 44, she's, you know, and after that, it's just a slow fade to nothingness. At 56, I mean, quite frankly, what guy wants to bang a 56-year-old woman? Please tell me, how many guys want to do that, huh? But with guys, it's the opposite. See, when you're young, when you're 16, when you're 20, you don't have any sexual attractiveness to women. You're at the bottom of the barrel. Why? Because what is the thing that makes a man attractive? His position and his place in the world, his success in the world. It's not money. Foolish guys confuse it with money. No, it's not money. Money is merely a signifier of the social position of the man. I mean, he's got a lot of money. That means that he's got a strong social position. Okay? And when does a man's social position peak? In his 40s. Between the ages of 44 and 51, that's when you peak. That's when you are at your most attractive to women. Now, this chart has very interesting implications. The hottest a woman will ever be is in her early 20s, right? And the most attractive a man will be in his 40s. So if there are no rules in the sexual marketplace, you should see a lot of guys who are at their peak, at their 40s, who are doing very well, you know, attracting 20-year-old girls, 21, 22-year-old girls. Do you see that? Yes, you do. You do it all, see it all the time. Look at Instagram. Instagram is basically the repository of all the pictures of these very hot girls hanging out with these very hot guys. Hot guys in the sense that they are sexually attractive to women. They might not be physically attractive. They might not be like a male model. But they've got what women want, which is the important thing. See? What women want, what they find sexy, what attracts them sexually, is position, social position. And see, so since there are two different peaks, these two peaks, they congregate. Yeah, of course, they attract, but there's something else going on with this chart. It sort of like explains why girls begin to panic when they hit 30. Yeah, girls hit their peak at 2021, right? But, you know, that's a slow decay of attractiveness, and it's so slow and so imperceptible. People do perceive it where the woman perceives it. And that's age 30. Yeah, that's the famous wall. But it's not really a wall. It's more like the woman starts to realize that she is no longer as hot as she used to be, right? And what happens to guys, though, when they're in their 30s? Do they have a tipping point? Oh yeah, I forget where it was. I think it was a restaurant of some sort. And there were like 2-3 women, like in their 20s, who turned to look at me. Like look at me like I was like a T-bone steak and they were hungry mutts. It's like thrilled and confused. And all of a sudden I realized that, yeah, things were going well for me in my life. Things were going well for me in my life insofar as my career was concerned. At the time I was doing some sport. It was all these little incremental steps going up the ladder. All these little incremental steps reaching to my peak. And all of a sudden it was clicking, right? And those girls at that restaurant, right? They looked at me, there were like 3 girls and they all turned to look at me and they checked me out and they were young. They were like in their 20s. I felt fantastic, but that was the moment it happened to me. It was the reverse wall. And it's happened to just about every guy I've ever talked to about this issue. Yeah. In my 20s, I was living in LA, working as a writer, and that was kind of like a shitty time, but you get to a certain point where, yeah, you're a loser in your teens and your 20s. And then in my 30s, I moved to New York and I started doing really well with girls. And I was pretty happy. And you're a semi-loser in your mid to late 20s. But in your 30s, as I eased into my late 30s and then into my 40s, the shit really came together for me. Oh yeah, I was back in Chile and Jesus Christ, the opportunities. And as you ease into your 40s, not just gorgeous, but women of real quality were just throwing themselves at me. And they turned to look at you. Now this only happens in a deregulated sexual marketplace. I've talked about the deregulated sexual marketplace in this video, right? But there are no rules. You can fuck anybody you want so long as both of you are on the same side of the age of consent, right? Presumably everybody watching this is an adult, right? And you're fucking an adult, another adult, right? Or as many adults as you want. But the point, in the past, there was a lot of societal pressure for you to pair up. Both you if you were a man and you if you were a woman. There was a lot of societal pressure to pair up and make a family. You know, settle down, but settle down early. I mean, everybody was pushing young people. And it's only recently where that pressure is gone. Parents are not forcing their kids or encouraging their kids or pressuring their kids to get married. On the contrary, in a lot of the Western democracies, they're encouraging them to fool around and keep on being a child as opposed to form a family. And so a lot of people do that. A lot of people just keep on fucking around, men and women, until, you know, they hit their 30s. And then all of a sudden they decide to settle down because the women start to freak out. And the men, what's happened to the men when they're in their early 30s, right? When all of a sudden the women start freaking out. The women start to freak out and want a relationship. And what do the men do? They settle because they don't realize that their best years are ahead of them. The women who are like in their early 30s, when they're hitting the wall, when they're realizing they no longer are as attractive as they used to be, they go and get a guy. And the guy who's in his early 30s and has behind him, you know, decades, plural, of just loneliness and not being very successful with girls. And all of a sudden, he's easing into his 30s, and these girls are going after him. These girls who are 30, 32, 34, 36, and they want him, they want to lock him down. What does he do? He says, oh man, great, yeah, finally, I'm gonna marry some girl. Yay, yay, finally, I'm found a girl and I'll settle down and be happy. And they settle down with the first 30-something woman who locks them down. Oh man, and what a fucking mistake. Yeah, because the guy who's like 34, 35, right? Who's starting to ease into the peak of his sexual attractiveness, right? What happens? He's bumbling around, not realizing that the peak is ahead of him. And some girl who's coming off her peak, who's on that downward slide, latches on to him. That's what happens. Yeah, she's on her downward slide. She's had all the cock that you could possibly imagine. From ages of 21 to 32, she's been in every kind of just sexual escapade that you can imagine, right? And she's 32 and she realizes that she's losing it, and she sees you who are 32, 35, who are just inching towards your peak, but not realizing it, right? She latches on to you. She puts a ring on your finger. And you, like a fucking idiot, are like, oh, okay, I'll do it, you know? Because, of course, because of the drought you had in your past. Yeah, because like I said at the beginning of this video, you know, when I was in my teens and 20s and stuff like that, you know, the sex thing wasn't, and, you know, when I eased into my 30s and I started getting really good with women and getting women consistently and hot women, that's when I started to realize that, yeah, sure, you know, when I was young, I was just a bumbling fool, but now that I'm older, you know, I got a little bit more on the ball, you know, I'm sexually successful. And of course, it's only now, as I said, as a 51-year-old man, that I understand the arc, or let me rephrase that, the arcs, plural, too, of men's and women's sexual attractiveness. That's why I made that stupid chart. Yeah. Because you see how it is? You see how it goes? See, women peak early in their sexual attractiveness, and men, you, peak late. And so what do you do if you peak late? Well, you don't put yourself in a position where you can get locked down against your will. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, because do you really want to be married at 34, you know, after this huge sexual drought, just as sexual opportunities are coming your way? Do you want to get locked down by some girl who's fucked God knows how much cock? And you know, do you want to get locked down with such a slut? Do you want such a slut to be the mother of your children? Huh? Is that how it is? I mean, are you into cuckoldry or some shit like that? Come on. When you're young, in your 20s and teens, you're not going to get anything. Or whatever you're getting, good as you may think it may be, well, believe me, it's going to be about 10 times better when you're in your 40s. At least 10 times better, okay? I mean, because I know this shit, because I've seen it now. I can see it clearly. Retrospectively, it's so fucking obvious. Number one, nobody was around to tell me this. Nobody was around to tell me this is how it is, okay? And number two, I was still under the illusions, the romantic illusions that you can find love and you can find the one and you'll live happily ever after. These romantic illusions that in the reality of this deregulated sexual marketplace are just foolish, or just absurd and ridiculous, because it's not only that they're not true, they are destructive. They go against your best interests. Where are you in terms of age? And where are you in terms of your career, your business, whatever earns you a living, right? You got to figure out those two elements, and that's when you can see where you are in the scale of your sexual attractiveness, and therefore you're going to be able to plan. You're working your ass off and you're lonely. You're lonely and isolated because you're just focused all on your work. Now, of course, this isolation is going to lead you to feel depressed. You're going to feel depressed because you're going to be thinking to yourself that it's never going to get any better. But if you realize at 27 that the peak of your sexual attractiveness will be at 45, you know, 18 years later, 18 years in the future. If you realize this and internalize it, you can say to yourself, well, you know, I'm lonely now, but fuck it, I'll have plenty of company later. So right now, I'll just ignore my loneliness and focus on my career, my business, my prospects, which is the healthy thing. That's what you should be doing. Now, of course, it's annoying and upsetting to be 27 and have a very good relationship with your right hand and nothing else. Yeah, of course you want to have a woman around, right? But what's important is that if you understand that in the future, all these sexual opportunities will come your way just as a function of your age, then you're not going to be so desperate. And more to the point, you're not going to make bad decisions. Because a lot of guys, out of loneliness, out of this misery, crushing misery, wind up hooking up with the wrong fucking women. Yeah, because what's your best interest? What do you want out of life? Huh? Well, it's very simple. If you're a man, you want to be successful in your career, establish yourself in your business, your career, your social milieu. You want to have some healthy children, 3, 4, the more the merrier. And you want to have those children with a woman who is young enough, energetic enough, and good looking enough to be worthwhile. Now, why do you want them good looking? Yeah, because you want healthy, good looking kids. You don't want ugly little brats now, do you? Well, of course not, right? And you want a young woman because you can have, number one, lots of kids with her because she's young, she's got the time to have them. And number two, she will be energetic enough to take care of those kids. You know, a woman in her 30s does not have the energy of a woman in her 20s. I've seen it firsthand, okay? So I know whereof I speak. But you see what I'm saying? This is the shape of the life that you want. So why are you going to lock yourself down with some slut who's fast approaching the wall, who tries to lock you down at 30, 32, 35, when the best years of your life are ahead of you?